Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy, Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, we're going to run down a couple of the news stories from this weekend just real quickly, and then we're going to take a dive into the NFL draft and take a look at some of the best prop bets to target to make some money next week on the NFL draft. So we've got a good show coming up. Go ahead, pull out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome in, everyone. Glad to see you all on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and of course, those of you listening on the podcast form as well. For those of you unaware, I got a message over the weekend asking for Wake and Take to be a podcast. So I just want to bring home the point that we actually do have a separate podcast channel for Wake and Take. It is not on the Player Profiler main podcast feed, but we are available wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find the pod link in the description. So go check that out. For sure, go check out the podcast version as well. But I know you all like seeing my face in the mornings. But anyway, good morning to you all. Nothing like a Monday Wake and Take. I agree with you, Nick, Take, Jake, and good morning to you as well, T-Real. Let's go ahead and get cracking. Well, actually, before we get cracking, I just want to say this weekend, I had the wonderful time is probably a bad way to put it, but I just wanted to give you all what's the word for this? Just I just want to make you guys feel like you should. There's a word for this, but basically I cleaned out my fridge this weekend and I am just so happy I did it. Throw away all the old stuff I'm not really eating, cleaning out the kind of gunk that for some reason builds on the bottom of the fridge, all that stuff. And it feels so nice having a clean fridge. It really, really does. Encourage is the word I was looking for. I encourage you all to go clean your fridge today or this week. It really doesn't take that much time. Go throw out your food you're not eating. Go throw out the expired stuff. Get rid of the stuff you bought that you didn't actually need. Just do it. And then wipe down the fridge and you'll feel really, really good about it. I promise. It's some nice serotonin when you open that fridge. It can actually see everything. It's not overwhelming. It's not gross. So do it. Go clean your fridge this weekend. Go ahead and clean your fridge. So anyway, let's talk some football. First, we have some news for you. And the first bit of news is not even news, right? It's this weekend, Brandon Aiyuk reportedly requested a trade from the 49ers. And then just a couple hours later, reportedly, his agent came out and denied the trade request rumor. So we basically have no idea what's going on in the Brandon Aiyuk situation yet again. This is something that's kind of been building all offseason. Brandon Aiyuk has kind of been a drama queen on his Instagram story, kind of publicly airing out his grievances with the San Francisco 49ers, contract disputes, free agency things, all of this stuff. Unfollowing them on Instagram last week. And now it's not bullet to the point where now we're arguing if he has requested a trade or not. The thing that we need to know about this is this kind of happens all the time, right? We're about to talk about it in a second, T. Higgins, but players request trades or don't request trades kind of all the time. And rarely it even happens. If we remember even last season, Deebo Samuel on the same team came out and requested a trade from the 49ers, said he didn't want to be on the team anymore, felt disrespected, felt he needed a bigger contract, wanted to go back home. Do you remember that, guys, when we all thought Deebo Samuel would be a Miami Dolphin, right? You remember this? And so it's just important to kind of talk about all of the history, and there's tons of other examples. Just because somebody requests a trade, just because there's rumors of a trade, doesn't necessarily mean that it'll happen. Now, could it? Yes. And I think that Brandon Aiyuk, for example, would be a very fun fit in the Buffalo Bills, replacing that Stephon Diggs role, because I'm not sure what wide receiver will be available for them at the end of the first round. But again, that is all really going to come down to the San Francisco 49ers. It almost has nothing to do with Brandon Aiyuk. If they feel they can't get a good enough return for a player that's done really, really well for them, then they're not going to move on from him regardless of what he thinks. So there's a lot of drama surrounding this. We're not necessarily sure what. So I'm just going to sum it up as we've seen a 49ers player within the last year kind of go through the same situation, and he ended up back on the team. So we can probably expect about the same for Brandon Aiyuk. But if he does switch teams, you guys know where to go in the next morning to find out what to do about it. So we're not going to, speculate too much here. We are going to talk about it a little bit as we just did, but no speculation, no guessing. All we know is that he may or may not have requested a trade. And that last year we kind of had a similar situation with Deebo Samuel, and he was back on the team. So that's where we'll lead with that. And speaking of requests from trades not really meaning anything, T. Higgins who requested a trade from the Bengals earlier this offseason after getting franchise tag, has come back and said that he expects to be with the Bengals next season and wants to play for the Bengals next season. Funny how that works, right? Where he finds out that, there's not that many suitors. And if there is a suitor for him, it's probably a team he doesn't actually want to play for. So now he's like, all right, screw it. Put me back on the Bengals. But again, just because now he's made this decision to return to the Bengals doesn't mean he will. It's, again, all up to the organization to decide if they want to trade a player or not. And so, again, yes, T. Higgins has come out and requested a trade. And now T. Higgins has come out and said, you know what? I don't want to be traded. But it could still happen. Same with Brandon Aiyuk. It could still happen. So we're not taking it off the table. But we are saying where it's at right now, and that is that both of these players have kind of been wishy-washy about their current team, and if a move is to happen regarding a top-tier wide receiver, it's probably going to be one of T. Higgins or Brandon Aiyuk, or really neither, or a random wild card player that we're not even talking about right now, but I doubt that happens. But, I mean, hey, that's what the draft is for, so we'll kind of find out on draft day probably. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a big move on draft day for a wide receiver. We saw it with A.J. Brown a few seasons ago, so we could see something like that happen again for sure. So that's kind of the where the T. Higgins and Brandon Aiyuk situations are at right now. Lastly, in terms of news, we just have the beginning of the offseason training camps, voluntary offseason training camps for 25 NFL teams begin today. Basically, every NFL team that has a returning head coach has begun practicing this week. It's all voluntary, so I don't think we're really going to hear much about it, really, but just to kind of celebrate, right? We're here, guys. Like, the 2024 season is getting closer and closer and closer, and it starts today. We're having practices today. I could go. No, I can't. They have a new head coach. Never mind. I can't go up to Flowery Branch and watch the Falcons practice. But maybe in a couple weeks I can. And even then, that's still very exciting that 25 teams have begun their practices. And it'll be interesting to see if we hear anything. I doubt we really do. Off the top of my head, I don't really remember hearing much hype from voluntary offseason camps pre-NFL draft, just because so many things can shake up. But still, it's just a nice signal that the NFL season is getting closer. So let's go, ladies and gentlemen. We've got football. We've got football. It's so nice. So very nice. So that's all the quick news for you guys. Before we get into the news, I do want to play a quick ad for you guys just before we get going. So go ahead and listen to one of our sponsors, the FFPC.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
Go sign up for FFPC today. Fun fact, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and call it a mistake, but I wanted to challenge myself this offseason. You can go adopt orphans at myffpc.com. And basically, you can get in on a big money league for not really the price of the money, really just the orphan takeover fee. So I bought a really bad team to see what I could do. I am talking the only asset on my team is Jared Goff. I have no running backs. My best wide receiver is Gabe Davis. My best tight end is Jawan Johnson. And I'm trying my best to take that nothing. And my first round pick is like the 110, I think. 110 or 112, like a late one. Like, I have no way to really salvage this team. So I'll kind of update that throughout the season, this absolute shit FFPC team that I adopted, just to see what I could do. I literally was like, what is a bad team? And I did it. So we'll find out. It was probably a bad decision, but I thought it'd be kind of fun. So anyway, go get the FFPC today, $25 off your first team with the code UNDERWORLD. So I promised some NFL draft prop bets. I'm going to give you some NFL draft prop bets. And my first kind of disclaimer here is that it's illegal to prop bet in Georgia. So generally when I give betting advice, I like to be putting my money where my mouth is. I can do underdog bets, although I didn't see anything for the draft yet on underdog. If that does happen, we'll talk about this. And also, I just wanted to say that I'm not an expert in the betting field. Now, I'm going to lay out a bunch of ones that I definitely find intriguing, but I'm definitely not taking this video as an opportunity to say, hey guys, take your hard-earned money and put it on these. What I am saying is these are some interesting ones. If you also find them interesting and you've got some money to burn, maybe try it. But I'm really not a big fan of losing money for my audience. I'm really not. I kind of hate talking about betting, but I know that this is a very trending topic this week. This was suggested to me by the powers that be that we talk about draft props this week as we get closer. So I'm going to do it. But again, I don't want y'all burning your hard-earned money on this stuff. If you got money to lose, sure, but be safe out there. Seriously, be responsible. I really don't want anyone to come to me. That's why I'm prefacing this, right? I don't want anyone to come to me and be like, oh, but you told me that this would happen. That's not the case here. That's not the case here. I am just talking about some that I found interesting, some different options that we could go with this route and why I feel that way. And hopefully, you know, maybe you agree with it, maybe you don't. But I'm not like, I really don't want to give hard and fast betting advice. I find that that's very dangerous. So I just want to put that out there. I care about you guys. I don't want y'all losing your money. And save your $25 for the Wake and Take Invitational if you haven't paid up yet. Pay that $25 to get, I think we're still waiting on like half the league to pay. So make sure you do that. Use your $25 for that, not these prop bets. But nonetheless, there are some interesting ones out there. And of course, this is a great way to make some money for those that, you know, are interested in this type of stuff. And so we'll talk about it. And a lot of these I pulled from FanDuel. There were a couple from DraftKings Sportsbook as well. But most of these came from FanDuel as they kind of had a more exciting prop bet market, I guess is how you would phrase it. And so what I wanted to look for was plus odds ones. I didn't really care about the favorites just because, you know, those are favorites for a reason. But some interesting plus odds prop bets that I think could be good, Again, emphasis on could, you know, that I think make a certain amount of sense. Will they happen or not? That's kind of why you bet on these in the first place, right? That's why they're plus odds, is they're not necessarily expected to happen, but they could happen. So we'll start. Again, a lot of these are coming from FanDuel. The first one is I was looking at the odds to be a first round pick on FanDuel. And these are the three that have plus odds that I think have, or four actually, that I think have a chance to be a first round pick. We'll start with the quarterbacks, Michael Penix and Bo Nix. Michael Penix has plus 110, Bo Nix at plus 155. Both of those I think could be first round picks just because they're quarterbacks and because of that fifth-year option availability. If any team is going to take a chance on these quarterbacks, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens at the end of the first round. Now, a lot of the analysis out there is expecting them to be second-round picks. That's why these are plus odds. But again, in my latest video last week, I did say that I expect Michael Penix and Bo Nix to be picked in the first round. Michael Penix to the Seahawks, Bo Nix to the Vikings at pick 23. And I'm not really going to go away from that. I do think that both of those options make a lot of sense. And so if you want to throw $5-10 on this, I think that that's a fun one. Plus 110 for Michael Penix to be drafted in the first round. Plus 155 for Bo Nix to be drafted in the first round. Of course, Michael Penix, the one that seems more likely. That's why the odds suggest that. But just saying it. Another one that I think is interesting to keep your eye on, although I think less likely to happen, I'll say it. Ladd McConkey, first round pick at plus 250. I am not so confident that Ladd McConkey is a first round talent, but there are a lot of teams that need a wide receiver, especially at the end of the first round. So it's very probable that one of those teams do take a shot on a wide receiver. And Ladd McConkey is one of those names that keeps floating around. A lot of the other wide receivers with plus odds are not as high as Ladd McConkey. Like Troy Franklin was like plus 430. Keon Coleman was like plus 650. But Ladd McConkey up at plus 250, I think is one that a lot of people have been thinking could happen, whether that be like a new Bills slot receiver, maybe going to the Chiefs as a slot receiver. But one of those teams has, you know, been tied to Ladd McConkey, at least in the fantasy football space. So that's where I'm kind of, you know, I'm iffy on. I think that Ladd McConkey, again, does bring a lot to an NFL team. And that's why I think he could eke into the first round, because he can help on special teams as well as be a pretty solid slot receiver. But we've also not seen much college production from him either, and lots of health concerns. So I just don't know if he's actually going to end up being a first round pick. But if you're going to take a chance on a wide receiver with plus odds to be a first round pick, I think Ladd McConkey would be the better one out of the ones with plus odds. I don't think Troy Franklin's really going to happen. Keon Coleman, I don't really think is going to happen. And then the rest are all negative odds, like an Adonai Mitchell, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy. So not really much money to be had there. And the last one that I think is a little interesting is Braden Fisk at plus 430 to be a first round pick. This is a guy who absolutely dominated at the combine, coming out of Florida State as a defensive tackle, all of his workout metrics in like the 90th percentile or better. He weighs almost 300 pounds at 6'4" and ran a sub 4.8 40-yard dash. Just an absolutely insane NFL combine. And that athleticism helped his draft stock. Now, again, a lot of the reports are there is that Fisk will be a second round pick, but I wouldn't be as surprised if a team like, say, the Lions kind of takes a chance on a defensive tackle there at the end of the first round. Maybe a team trades back up, and I think Braden Fisk is one of those, especially at plus 430, that I think could be very interesting, with his athleticism. So that's kind of one I'm highlighting as well. So those are kind of the ones I thought were interesting with plus odds to be a first round pick. Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Braden Fisk, and Ladd McConkey. Now, the next one I found on FanDuel that I think is a one that could potentially make some big bucks is the first defensive player taken. Like right now, Dallas Turner is the favorite at minus 110. And let's be honest, Dallas Turner will probably be the first defender taken. But on a lot of big boards and just draft analysis in general, Laiatu Latu and Jared Verse are very, very close to Dallas Turner in terms of projection, and their odds are a lot better. Jared Verse is plus 350, Laiatu Latu is plus 400, and if you want to get even crazier, if you think maybe a corner could get picked first, Quinyon Mitchell is all the way down at plus 1,000, which I think could also be very, very interesting. Terrion Arnold is even lower than Quinyon Mitchell. Now, I am in the belief that an edge rusher will probably be the first defender taken. And again, I think it'll probably be Dallas Turner, but him, Jared Verse, and Laiatu Latu all have very, very good athleticism. All three are projected as really like top 10 talents, not top 10 picks, but top 10 talents. And it really could go either which way. Now, the reason I think it'll probably be Dallas Turner is because a lot of, like, look at this. They're all like 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 250 to 260 pounds. They all have 90th percentile or better workout metrics kind of across the board. But Jared Verse and Laiatu Latu are both 23 years old, whereas Dallas Turner is only 21. And I do think that youth at the end of the day is probably going to drive a team to take Dallas Turner over Verse or Latu first. But I do listen to 92.9 The Game, Atlanta's sports radio, and a lot of people, expecting the Falcons to take Dallas Turner. Well, they have Randy McMichael, who's one of the hosts. He's a 10-year NFL vet. Granted, he was a tight end that never saw too much success, but was still good on the NFL field and has been around a lot of organizations and stuff. He does not like Dallas Turner as a prospect, thinks he's a little too raw, and that's probably coming from the age. But, hearing that makes me believe that I'm sure there are other NFL people out there that think Dallas Turner isn't quite the best edge rushing prospect out there. And I do think that, Laiatu Latu and Jared Verse are probably a bit more solidified, as in they'll be successful. Dallas Turner, of course, has that upside with his youth. But, a team might just kind of take that more standard option and go with Verse or Latu. So again, those have plus odds to be the first defensive player taken. Dallas Turner is the favorite at minus 110. So that's one that I think could be interesting. Again, I think it'll probably be Dallas Turner first, but if you have an inkling, like, I really think Laiatu Latu is just so much better than Dallas Turner. I think that an NFL team thinks that too. Then there you go. Throw $10 on, you might make 40. I think that's how the math works. Again, like I said, this stuff's not legal here in Georgia, so I'm really not an expert. But again, these are interesting. And then another one that's interesting, and what I found very interesting about this is that it could be parlayed. And this was the wide receiver prop bets on FanDuel. They have prop bets for first wide receiver taken and also second wide receiver taken. Now, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the favorite to be picked at minus 600 as the first wide receiver, but Malik Neighbors has plus 400 odds, and all of us can agree Malik Neighbors' hype has gone through the roof the last couple weeks. And with that being said, there are some people out there who believe that Malik Neighbors could be taken before Marvin Harrison Jr. And if you are one of those people, I highly suggest doing the parlay. because you could do this: Malik Neighbors as the first wide receiver taken at plus 400, and then tie it together with Marvin Harrison Jr. as the second wide receiver taken at plus 470, because Marvin Harrison Jr. is the favorite to be first and Malik Neighbors is the favorite to be second. So if you are one of those people, I'm not. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it's even, I am a Marvin Harrison Jr. truther, and I can't believe I even have to say that at this point. I'm really surprised how much hype has gone around Malik Neighbors. I mean, I get it given the stats he had, but we have been talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. for years now. I'm not overthinking it. I'm just not. But that's what the NFL draft is for. NFL teams overthink, analysts overthink, scouts overthink, us fantasy football people overthink. And so there's a chance out there that Malik Neighbors is first and Marvin Harrison Jr. is second. And because that can be parlayed, if you're one of those people who is just like, Malik Neighbors is that dude, I've heard a lot of people out there, then that is an excellent opportunity for you. Just way too rich for my blood. I think it's pretty sure that Marvin Harrison Jr. is first, and that's why he's negative 600, and Malik Neighbors is the next highest at plus 400. Those are wildly different in the market. But again, if you think that's going to happen, again, you can parlay this. So you could do Malik Neighbors plus 400, Marvin Harrison plus 470 to be second. And then that's a really solid little parlay ticket right there. And just in case you're wondering, Rome Odunze is plus 380 to be the second wide receiver and like plus 800 to be the first wide receiver taken. I just don't think anyone is really thinking that to happen. So again, if you're a Neighbors truther guy out there saying that he's, past Marvin Harrison Jr., there's some money to be made for you. I'm just not one of those people. The next one I'm looking at is the first running back drafted on FanDuel. And the reason I looked at this is because there are no minus odds. All of the running backs are plus odds. So Trey Benson at plus 210, Jonathan Brooks at plus 250, Blake Corum at plus 380, Jalen Wright at plus 500, Marshawn Lloyd at plus 650, and Will Shipley at plus 3,000. Now, Trey Benson is the fantasy football one, and I think Jonathan Brooks / Blake Corum are kind of the NFL one. And my take is I still think that the Cowboys are heavily eyeing Jonathan Brooks with their second round pick. And so I think that he's going to be the first one taken. So that's my official advice. Say Jonathan Brooks at plus 250 to be the first running back taken. And then I think, of course, Trey Benson and Blake Corum and Jalen Wright. All three of those would be excellent bets as well. I'm taking Jonathan Brooks, but if you have a feeling on which running back you think will be first taken, I don't blame you. Trey Benson's a good bet. Blake Corum's a good bet. Jalen Wright's a good bet. Even Marshawn Lloyd's probably a good bet. I don't think Will Shipley is. I would be surprised if Will Shipley is the first running back taken. That's probably why he's plus 3,000. But still, even for a long shot bet, it's not terrible. He is a pass catcher, and we're not sure really what this draft capital is going to look like for these running backs. So it's possible, the first one isn't even taken until the third round, and then that could be Will Shipley. But I think it'll be Jonathan Brooks in the second. I think Trey Benson and Blake Corum could also go second, early third. Jalen Wright, too, after his combine performance. So I think it's probably going to be one of those four. Marshawn Lloyd, the kind of underdog pick there, but also still possible because he had a really good Senior Bowl, pretty solid combine, and has some ties to the NFL, like the Chargers, for example. His running back coach is their running back coach. So anyway, that's the running backs. Again, no minus odds on the running backs in terms of being the first one drafted. So if you have a preference, there you go. And I do. I think it's Jonathan Brooks. I think that's a good one. And then let's go ahead to the next part of the show, which I am looking at position of first drafted players, how it's phrased. So there were three teams that I thought had interesting ones where you could maybe make some money. Not every team had this available. So you can't, for example, bet on the Bears first drafted player or the Commanders or Patriots, I think. Really some of the top ones. It was like kind of the middle to end range teams were the ones that you could pick their first drafted player. And it was really all over the place. And it was position. So position of first drafted player, not like first drafted player in general. So for the Chiefs, the favorite for them to pick at pick 32 is wide receiver. And their odds for that is minus 125. But as I've talked about a few times now, I think they're primed to take a cornerback at pick 32. I don't think that there's a wide receiver there worth the pick compared to what cornerbacks will be available for them. And with them losing L'Jarius Sneed, I think they need a corner. And I know they have this whole Rashee Rice situation going on, and that's why the wide receiver odds have gone up. But they brought in Hollywood. And last year, they didn't invest in wide receiver in the first round either. And so I think that they'll probably do the same thing. I think they'll lock down a corner with pick 32 and then look for wide receiver in the second or third rounds. And so, again, plus 650 for the Chiefs to take a cornerback with their first pick. And I really like that one. I'm really not going to lie to you guys. Like, if I could put money on that one, that's probably the one. Another one is the Seahawks position of first drafted player. They are favorited to take O-line at minus 160. But quarterback is plus 1,300. And again, guys, I think it's very possible the Seahawks take Michael Penix. And I think that would be very interesting. Again, his Washington offensive coordinator is now the Seahawks offensive coordinator. They don't seem very committed to Geno Smith. And with a new regime kind of coming in, I really do think they'll be looking for the quarterback of the future. Again, I bring up the quote from the NFL Combine where the new head coach, Mike Macdonald, came out and said, I'm not sure what the plan is for Geno Smith or Drew Lock. And then Drew Lock was shipped off. So I think, again, you don't take a head coaching job if you don't know the quarterback plan. And to hear him so non-committal about Geno Smith makes me very, very worried. And I know they went out and got Sam Howell too. But again, this is the last year of Geno Smith's contract as well. So I really think they're going to be looking to quarterback. Now, it could be second round, right? And then, this isn't really the case. But at plus 1,300, I think that's a pretty good one too. They could trade back even. And that's something the Seahawks do. They trade back a lot. So again, minus 160 to be O-line as their first, but plus 1,300 for quarterback to be their first position taken. And I think that they have a lot of ties to Michael Penix. I think that makes a lot of sense. The next team position of first drafted player with some interesting opportunity is the Jaguars. They are favored to take a cornerback first at minus 160. But I think wide receiver is very, very possible at well. And the odds for wide receiver is plus 360. I know they just brought in Gabe Davis, but they did lose Calvin Ridley. Christian Kirk is coming off an injury. Zay Jones couldn't stay healthy last year. So I think that they could definitely be looking at wide receiver. And at their pick, wide receiver is definitely within range. It's very, very easy for them to get, and probably a good one. I think in my latest mock, I had them landing Brian Thomas Jr., which I think could be great. So plus 360 for them to take wide receiver is not bad at all. I think it's definitely within the cards. So that's the last of the team's first drafted player. I have Chiefs plus 650 for corner, Seahawks plus 1,300 for quarterback, and then Jags plus 360 for wide receiver. Now, lastly, on FanDuel, there you could pick what team picks a quarterback. And if you'll remember a couple weeks ago, I did an episode predicting landing spots for quarterbacks. So the ones that I predicted all had really good odds. So if you really liked that video, if you believe in these like I kind of do, then here are your options. Bo Nix to the Vikings at plus 950. Michael Penix to the Seahawks at plus 1,000, and JJ McCarthy to the Broncos at plus 900. I think all of those are excellent. Again, Michael Penix to the Seahawks because of his ties with the coordinator. JJ McCarthy to the Broncos, just because I personally think the JJ McCarthy to Vikings is a smokescreen. JJ McCarthy is not the type of quarterback that does well in that kind of system. I think they want a true pocket passing, big arm quarterback like Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix is an excellent option for the Vikings, especially with their second first-round pick. There's a lot of reports coming out that they want edge with their first-round pick, and then they could see what they do with pick 23. I think it's quarterback. I really think Bo Nix will be sitting there, and I think he's the perfect quarterback for that team. I really do. He looked really, really good last season at Oregon. And with Justin Jefferson, with that kind of system, I think he'd do really well. And I think the Vikings know that too. So Bo Nix plus 950 to Vikings, Michael Penix to Seahawks at plus 1,000, and JJ McCarthy to Broncos at plus 900, because I think Sean Payton really likes JJ McCarthy. That just, to me, JJ McCarthy just seems like a Sean Payton quarterback. So that is it for FanDuel. And the last pick I have for you guys is the DraftKings Falcons pick at number 8. The reason I liked it is because, kind of going back to one of the earlier ones, all of the edge rushers for the Falcons at pick number 8 are positive, are plus odds. So if you think it's Dallas Turner, you could get in at plus 210. If you think it's Laitu Latu, you could get in at plus 350. And if you think it's Jared Verse, you could get in at plus 500. But I think we can kind of all agree that if the Falcons stay at pick number 8 and pick, it's probably an edge rusher. And it's probably Dallas Turner, Latu, or Verse. All of them have plus odds. It's probably Dallas Turner if we're going off age. But again, I think Laitu Latu is a more sure thing, so they could totally go that route as well. And again, that's something that you could, I mean, it'd be two different services, right? But if you think that the Falcons take, Latu at plus 350, you could do that on DraftKings. And then for first defensive player, you could bet on Latu at FanDuel at plus 400. And that's two opportunities for you. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. Again, it's probably Dallas Turner, but there's a reason these are markets, right? I mean, anything could happen. That's why there's plus odds. That's why there's minus odds, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, those are all the NFL draft props I found very, very interesting. I don't think any of them are, wild. I think that all of these are reasonable. But again, I just want to put that disclaimer out there. I'm not putting any of my money on this. And so I want you to know that I'm not putting my money where my mouth is. Granted, it's illegal for me to put my money where my mouth is, but still, I at least found these interesting. And if you have the money to bet that you don't mind losing, like say you've got $50 burning a hole in your pocket and want to figure out how to spread it around, here you go. But again, don't bet what you cannot lose. Be responsible. And, good luck. I hope you win some money, and hopefully some of these picks do come true. I mean, I'm sure at least some of these will. I really do think that a lot of these were reasonable. And that's, that was kind of my whole point with this, right? Is I did not want to get unreasonable because this is real money at stake. And we work hard for our money in this country. So I just want you guys to be able to keep your money. I really do. I'm being serious here. So again, just be responsible if you are partaking in any of these NFL draft props. So guys, do we have any questions? I'll go ahead and check in on the chat. Looks like nothing over here on Instagram. And none really over here on YouTube as well. However, saying that just because we've been talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. for years doesn't mean that that it's a good argument. I do not remember the hype for Kayshon Boutte or Treylon Burks being anywhere near the hype that we have had for Marvin Harrison Jr. So I get it. And I agree, especially with Treylon Burks, right? Where he was like the 101 before the NFL draft. Like if you did any pre-draft rookie drafts, everyone was taking Treylon Burks over like Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. But I don't think that this is a fair comparison for Marvin Harrison Jr. Like he had more production than these guys. He has, we don't know the athletic profile, so that's kind of the thing, right? Where it's like Kayshon Boutte and Treylon Burks, like they just had these, high ceilings that people were kind of latching onto. But Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of has everything, right? Like it is just, son of Hall of Famer, really, really good height, really, really good weight, really, really good college production. No negatives at all. Like no one has a negative for Marvin Harrison Jr. except he's only like okay at Yak, like only all right at Yak, which is not bad. So I'm just taking myself some Marvin Harrison Jr. and I'll take the kind of sure thing prospect, even if the ceiling isn't necessarily as high for Marvin Harrison Jr. as it is for Malik Neighbors. The floor is definitely higher, and I still think the ceiling is plenty damn high for MHJ. So again, thank you all for tuning in, and I'm just going to bring home this last point of the Hairy Snowman. Don't gamble more than you can lose and expect to lose. This is true. Again, do not bet more than what you can lose. This is just like stock markets or whatever. Like it's gambling. You can lose this money. And so don't get, you guys get the point. Y'all know how I feel. I don't want y'all losing a ton of money on this. Don't go betting the house. Don't bet your kids' college tuition. Bet your lunch money, right? Like, give up McDonald's for the week or something if you really want to have some fun, but don't make a life-shattering decision around NFL draft prop bets. All right, guys? Just please, just please. I really don't want to see a comment in a couple of weeks like, oh no, I lost $10,000 because I thought Jonathan Brooks would be the first running back taken. Like, please don't do that. I would lose sleep over that. So please don't do that to me, guys. Please, please, please. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, love spending my mornings with you guys. and I'll see you all tomorrow. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to Player Profiler. I'll be back at 10 a.m. Eastern on the YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me on my own personal Twitter at JFootballWine. Again, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you all tomorrow. Have a magnificent Monday and a wonderful rest of your week. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.